Hello, hello. Hello, it's Thursday. And hello to anyone here from TikTok. It's been a weird week. So, as you probably already know from the title and the thumbnail, today we're going to be making something requested by the chat in my last live stream, and that is, of course, frogs. So today we're going to be making this little rainbow dart frog. Now, for those of you who don't like color changes, I want to just reassure you for a second that you can also make him all in one color and he still comes out an adorable little frog. Also, he takes about half the time to make. So I'm going to be doing a different color variation on these two today. I'm going to be making the rainbow frog, but instead of using purple as my main background color, I'm going to be using white just to make those colors really pop. Let's get into tools and materials. Okay, so for tools and materials today, you're going to need 8-ply 100% acrylic yarn. Now you need anywhere from 1 all the way through to about 7 different colors. I've chosen my colors here today. So I'm going to use these for the stripes on his back. And I'm going to use white for my main color to provide a bit of a base. You're also going to need a 3.5mm hook, pins and needles, some scissors, some stuffing, and a pair of 20mm safety eyes. Now, I get this question a lot about what if you don't have eyes that are exactly 20mm. Anywhere from about 18 through to about 22 will work with the exact pattern that I'm using today. But you can always use larger eyes or smaller eyes. You just might need to adjust the eyelid piece a little bit, but we'll talk about that when we get there. But that's it. Doesn't that just make you, that just makes me feel happy. Now, as per usual, a written version of today's pattern will be sent out to my patrons and will also be made available in my Etsy store. And I will leave links to both in the description down below for anybody who's interested. I do just want to warn anybody looking for it ahead of time though, that there is already a frog pattern up in my Etsy store. It has like a smiling mouth on it. Don't confuse it with this guy. They are different patterns. Today, just because there are a lot of color changes in this little dude, I am going to have a color chart in the corner of the screen, and I am really sorry about the whole BC situation. It'll either bother you or it won't, but I'm sorry either way. So our froggy here is made in 7 pieces. So we have 2 front legs, 2 back legs, 2 eyelids, which you cannot see at all on this one, so I'm going to bring in my stunt double. So 2 little eyelids, and then we have the head and body piece. So we're going to start by making his eyelids, and I'm going to make mine in white. Now you can use whatever color you would like for yours. I just feel like white is going to blend in best with the color choices that I'm making for the rest of it. So we're going to start that eyelid by doing a magic ring of 8 single crochet. So there are my 8 stitches. So when making this eyelid, you want to make sure that the stem of whatever eye you're using is going to fit through the middle of your magic ring. So don't pull it too tightly when you're pulling to form the circle. There you go. So you see I've left a little bit of a gap in the middle. I'm then going to work an increase into each of the next 5 stitches. You'll note that that means that I'm not working the whole way around, but that's just because we only want the eyelid to show up on one side. We don't need the eyelid to show up on the front as well. So there we go. We've worked an increase into 5 of the stitches, and then we have 3 of the stitches from the main starting ring that we haven't worked into at all. So at this point, I'm going to try my eye. So I'm just going to fit it through that starting point. And this is what you want to see. You want to just be able to see the loops of those increases that you've just done standing out on one side of the eye. And on the other side, it should just meet the edge of the eye. It doesn't matter if it sticks out over a little bit. The point is this rim here. If you're using slightly larger eyes or slightly smaller eyes, you might need to adjust this piece bigger or smaller. And you should be able to do that just by changing the size of your starting magic ring. So working 6 stitches or 12 stitches accordingly. You're going to have to feel your way forward there. Leave me a comment if you need any help with adjusting this pattern for your eye size, and I will do my best. So then I'm going to finish off. We are not going to snap the backs on these eye pieces just yet. Instead, I'm going to pop that to one side and whip up the other one. Just like that. So there are his eyelids done, and we're going to just pop these to one side. So the next piece we're going to be making is the head and body piece. So this frog piece, we start at the tip of the nose and we work our way backwards, and there are several color changes per row. I'm going to try and make them as clearly marked as possible in the pattern. Now, I'm never going to tell beginners not to give it a go, but you should know that this is at minimum what I would consider to be an intermediate level puzzle. So You're going to start in whatever color you're using as your base color. So for me, that is white. But you're going to need to have your red and your orange on standby, ready to go. Okay, so the first 2 rows are pretty simple. We're going to start with a magic ring of 6. Like so, and then put an increase into each stitch around to bring us up to 12 stitches in total. So there we go, nice and easy, like I said. So in row 3, we have our first of the color changes. I'm gonna make sure that I have my orange ready. Now you might be wondering why I'm not going straight to the red, but if you look at the stripes, the red is focused in a circle on top of his head, and the orange acts across the nose as well as that first stripe around the back of the head. So when reading this pattern, you need to stay aware of the fact that you always want to change color in the stitch before you want your new color to be active. So when row 3 starts in color B, which is our orange, for 4 single crochet, that means that we need to change to color B in the last stitch of row 2. So I've just frogged that stitch there, and I'm going to change to my orange in that stitch. So how we're going to do all of the color changes in this pattern: insert your hook just as you would for any other stitch, yarn over or under and pull up a loop. So you should have 2 loops of your current color on your hook. Hold that color out of the way, grab the color you're changing to, and pinch it at the base of the stitch. And you'll see that I've got the tail leading off in the same direction as my current color. Yarn over with that new color and pull through those 2 loops. You can then give the 2 tails a gentle tug to pull the stitch into place. So you'll see there what we have is a full stitch in our old color, but my new color is on the hook, ready to go, ready to start round 3. So round 3 starts with 4 single crochet in color B, which is orange. So I'm going to work the first 3. 1, 2, 3, but then in the last of those orange stitches, so the 4th stitch, we need to change back to color A. Now you'll note that I'm not trimming off my colors. I'm going to literally just pull them across the work, or carry them under if you prefer, until we are done with each of the colors. So here we go. So I'm going to insert my hook, pull up a loop of my current color, hold it out of the way, pull my white forward, being careful not to like pucker the work. You want to pull it forward and leave enough slack there. Pinch it at the base of the stitch, yarn over and pull through both loops. And give the tail a tug to pull the stitch into place. So there we have our 4 stitches in color B with color A back on the hook. We then work the rest of row 3 all in that color A. So there we are at the end of row 3. You should have 16 stitches around in total, and you should have white still on your hook. But if you've been reading ahead, you'll note that row 4 starts again in color B. So once again, in that last stitch from the previous round, we want to change back to our orange. And we're going to basically follow those same steps for row 4. Now I do want to say, just as I work up these coloured stripes, that I understand that these stripes aren't as precise as some of you may like. I actually kind of liked the slight wibble wobble to them, and I thought that it really lent itself to the way natural markings on dart frogs work. Of course, you are more than welcome to ignore all colour instructions and work your stripes however feels best for you. There we are at the end of row 4, and we're going to do the same thing in row 5. So there we are at the end of row 5. So color management is key in this project. So while we're going to be using the orange again later, we are going to trim it off at this point and then reattach it when we need it again. Because otherwise you just end up with way too many strands and things start getting way too like tangled in together. I'm just going to trim it off all nice and polite and move it out of the way and have my strand of red ready to go, because now we're going to be working in colors A, which for me is white, and color C, which is red. So I can see that row 6 starts with 6 single crochet in color C. So I'm just going to go back a stitch and change color in the previous row, and then work the row exactly as we have been with the orange, just now we're using red. So using these techniques, you should go ahead and work the next 3 rows, so 6, 7, and 8. When you're working this many color changes, I doubly recommend, so more than usual, that at the end of each row you stop and you count and you make sure that you've got the number of stitches you're expecting to see. That's because sometimes in color changes you can pull one color or the other way too tightly and the stitch itself disappears almost. So yeah, basically you end up gaining or losing one where you really don't want to. And it's best to discover it at the end of the row as opposed to 5 rows later when you suddenly realize that your stripes have drifted off to one side. Just like that. So that's what we look like at the end of row 8. Now in row 9 we're going to be marking out 2 kind of eyebrows. They won't be super visible on your final frog, but we will use them to help position our eyes. I'm going to be using back post single crochet to do this. If you really don't like doing those stitches, you can skip them all together and it's not going to have a massive impact on how your frog looks at the end of this project. So I'm just going to start by working up the first 6 stitches of row 9, which are a combination of red stitches and white stitches. Changing back to white in our 6th stitch. There we go. And now we're going to work for back post single crochet. So the way those are worked is instead of working through the loops of your stitch, you're going to work around the post of the stitch. And because it's back post, you're going to insert your hook from the back of the piece, or the inside in this case, around the post and out through the back of the piece again. You're then going to yarn over and pull up a loop and work a single crochet as per usual. So we're going to do 4 of those. Just like that. And you can see that this gives us a little bit of a ridge, which is going to help us, as I mentioned, with that eye position. But what I'm going to do is, because I'm combining single crochet and back post single crochet in this row, is to make sure that I'm maintaining my stitch count, I'm going to count backwards from my hook until I hit the number 28. So and that is because it's honestly something that confuses me sometimes, and I don't know if it really impacts anyone else, but sometimes I struggle to work out if I'm supposed to go here next or if I'm supposed to go here next. So counting backwards from my hook until I hit 28, which is the number of stitches in the row, tells me exactly where I'm supposed to work my next stitch, and I don't have to worry about losing a stitch this round. So I'm then going to work 14 single crochet. And then we'll work up another eyebrow the exact same way. And that's the end of that row. So I am still gonna count backwards and just make sure I know exactly where I want my next stitch to fall. And it'll be into this red stitch here. And also, just coincidentally, row 10 starts with a red stitch. So I'm going to change that final white stitch out for a color change. So this has a lot of like fiddly bits to it, but you'll find that if you just take everything 1 stitch at a time, it all works up fine. So we're all set up to continue working up the rest of the body, but at this point, what I'm going to do instead, so we're just gonna pop our eyes in so you can get a better feel for what the face is going to look like. So I'll bring in my little peanut gallery here and the eyes where I've made them. So these eyelids have been designed to sit on the outer half of the eye, so not underneath, but on top. And you'll see where we put those ridges in. You're going to want to count 2 rows in front and insert the stem of your eye there. You can, of course, adjust these to suit yourself. But long story short, the bulk of this eyelid should line up with that little ridge that we put into place. So that's one on one side. I'm going to do the other one on the other side as well. So 1 and 2 rows in front. Because I work in a spiral, my eyes are going to be slightly crooked. If you also work in a spiral, yours will be as well. It's one of those things that I've just sort of made my peace with over the years, is that everything I make has that little bit of a wonk to it. And honestly, I've kind of learned to love it. I think it gives it personality. So that is our eye position. Now you can clip the backs on at this point. Notice that they're being clipped on through both layers. Or you can leave it a little bit later as well if you want to just make sure everything's still working up straight. So there are the eyes. Now later when we go to sew the legs on, we'll fasten these down as well if we so choose. But for now they are locked into position, so you won't be able to put this project down because he'll look at you with those big, big eyes and be like, why aren't you finishing me? Anyway, so at this point you have seen all of the skills you need to finish making the rest of this piece. So what we're going to do now is basically work up the next 15 rows to finish off the head and body. Now I want you to pay careful attention to which color is being used where, because we are going to work our way through the rest of the colors as we work up this piece. Okay, here we are at the end of row 21, and I just wanted to stop and acknowledge something. So I have threaded strands across the middle of my frog so many times now that it is starting to get a little bit warped out of shape. Not a lot, and normally I would just stuff it and ignore it. But just in case it's affecting you a little bit more than it is impacting me, I wanted to show you a quick trick that you can use to avoid it. So you can see in there, hopefully, all the strands reaching across the middle. I'm just going to take my scissors and very carefully just cut the middle of those strands. And with that, they're no longer pulled tight, and anything that was warped out of shape will now sit flat or properly again. And at this point, if you haven't already, do snap the backs onto your eyes, and we are going to stuff the head and the body. Now you are going to want to make a judgment call as to how firmly you want to stuff your pieces. If you stuff them a lot, you'll end up with like a little pudgy fellow. If you stuff it just a little, you'll get a little bit more of a dart shape. So stuff according to your preference. And now we're just going to work the last 3 rows. And finish off. Stuff any hanging out tails back inside. For he is not a tadpole anymore, therefore has no need for them. And we're going to weave our remaining end through the remaining 6 stitches, front loops only. And then we're going to pull it tight to close like a reverse magic ring. It does give him a little bit of a pointy booty, but don't worry about that, because when we attach his frog legs, that gets covered right up. Now you might be looking at this and be saying, well, blue's not really getting much of a showing here, and what happened to purple? Where did the purple go? But if you look at the legs, you'll see that green and blue both get a prominent showing, and purple is going to as well. At this point, I'm going to take these little extra strands and I'm just going to tuck them away inside the head, just so that they stop annoying me quite that much. So I am going to tuck them so that the eyelid is in the position I want it to stay in, even though we haven't sewn it on or anything like that. Even just tucking these bits in will anchor it into a certain position. In fact, you could probably even skip sewing altogether. Much better. So there is our finished head and body piece. Okay, so we're going to pop this off to one side and reset our working area. Now, I have already prepared ahead of time 1 back leg and 1 front leg so that you can see what I'm talking about here. So this time around, we're going to need our purple, our white, our blue, and our green. So just those 4 colors. So our yellow, red, and orange can all be packed away or chucked into the nearest available tub. I won't tell if you don't. So the front leg and the back leg are both worked exactly the same for the first 9 rows. So we are just going to start by making up our other front leg. Grab your purple and start by working a magic ring of 6 single crochet. Like so, and then put an increase into each stitch around to get us up to 12. There we go, so that makes up the sole of the foot, and now we want to work 3 little toes. Now, if you've done my axolotl pattern or a handful of other patterns, the technique I'm going to use next is going to be very familiar to you, but it is still slightly different because we want quite long toes on this fella. So first up, we are going to work in the front loop of the next stitch only, a double treble crochet. Now, thank you to the chat from my live stream the other day for letting me know what this stitch was called, because I think I was calling it like a quadruple crochet or something like that. But anyway, it's a double treble, and how it's worked is you yarn over your hook 3 times, insert your hook through the front loop of the next stitch only, yarn over and pull up a loop. So you should see here that you have 5 loops in total on your hook. So you're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2, yarn over and pull through the next 2, yarn over and pull through 2 more, leaving you with just your final 2 on the hook, yarn over and pull through those final 2. So that's what that currently looks like. You've got your double treble crochet curling all the way around, and that's just where we did our last stitch. So then I'm going to fold that forward and then working in the back loop of the same stitch. So we just worked the double treble in the front loop, and now into the back loop of that stitch, I'm going to work a slip stitch. Just like that. And that is going to fold that toe over and anchor it into position. So from the side, the bottom, the top. Now in subsequent rows, we will be working into the loops formed by that double treble and not the loops formed by the slip stitch. So make sure you keep an eye on that. Use a marker if you have to. So then in the next stitch, I'm going to work just a regular single crochet through both loops. And then I'm going to work my second toe. So yarning over 3 times, working my stitch into the front loop only, and then slip stitching into the back loop, and then a single crochet into the one afterwards. That's 2 little toes, so we have just 1 more to do. And the single crochet. So there are his 3 little toes, and now we need to finish forming the rest of the foot. So still working in our purple, I'm going to finish that row by working 6 single crochet around. Just like that. So that is the end of row 3. So in row 4, we're going to start narrowing in the top of the foot here. So as I mentioned, we are not going to work into the slip stitches into this row. So when I say we're about to work 3 decreases, know that they are worked in the loop of the toe and then the loop of the single crochet you did after the toe. So those are the 2 loops I'm working into. That's my first decrease. And then do the same thing for the next 2 toes. Now, if you're not sure if you've worked that correctly, after you've worked those 3 decreases, you can do a count and you should have 9 stitches in your round in total. If you have more than that, that means you've worked into the slip stitches and you need to frog it and try again. And then once again, I'm going to finish this row by working 6 single crochet around. Now, sadly, our piece is coming to an end because from the next row onwards, we are going to be working our color changes again. So row 5 starts with 2 decreases in our purple, but in the second one, we're going to change to our white. Just the same way as you've been changing colors for the whole rest of this pattern. I'm then going to work 1 white, 1 purple, 1 white, And finish off that round with a purple decrease, and in that purple decrease, change to your blue. So that is your final purple stitch for this little front leg. So you can finish that color off. I'm gonna work one more row before I do. And I'm just gonna stop at this point and like, I've got a loose white end here and a loose blue end, and just my opening is very crowded at the moment. So we're just gonna stop and do a little bit of yarn maintenance. There we go. So for the next 3 rows, so for 18 stitches in total, which is 6 in each row, you're going to alternate a blue stitch and then a white stitch. So it's going to go blue, white, blue, white, blue, white, basically until you've done all 18 stitches. Now that does mean we're changing color in every single stitch for those 3 rows. Now in the 18th stitch, you don't have to change back to blue, because in row 9, we are going to be working 2 white stitches and then a blue stitch, and then 2 white stitches and a blue stitch. So for row 10 and 11, you're going to be alternating between white stitches and green stitches. So just as we did earlier in this round, it's going to be a case of working 1 white stitch and then a green stitch, and then a white stitch and then a green stitch, all the way around for 12 stitches in total. And then finish off with a final row of 6 single crochet around, all in white. And finish off. Tuck any remaining tails down inside the leg. Note that we didn't stuff this piece at all. With all of those color changes, it should stand fairly stiffly, and it's not really a load bearing piece anyway. So you can kind of get away with not stuffing it. So I'm just now discovering that I made one of his legs one row too short, because I've accidentally skipped row 11 on it, but I'm just gonna barrel ahead. So keep in mind that this is what they should look like, and this is what happens if you forget to do one of the rows. Not a big difference. So when we go to attach these, you'll note that we've got this little sort of waist on our froggy, and these will go in there like that. 1. See what I mean about purple still being nicely represented? Honestly, I think the purple might be more present than some of the other colors. It's just not on the back. So there is Froggy with his front legs. So now in order to make the back legs, you're going to work the exact same pattern up as the front legs. It'll be on the screen again now for the first 9 rows to build up this first part of the leg. Just like so. So there we have the first 9 rows of the back leg. In the next row, we are going to work an increase in our blue, and then 2 single crochet in our white, and then we're going to repeat that again. So an increase in our blue, and then 2 single crochet in our white. So that should bring us up to 8 single crochet around. Now that is the last row for now with any blue in it, so I'm going to trim that off and tuck that end away inside down the leg. And in the next row, we're going to be alternating between white and our green again. So we're up to row 11, and we're going to work in white a single crochet and then an increase, and change to our green, and work 2 single crochet and change back to our white, and then repeat all of that again. Like so. So I'm going to tuck the little green starting point down inside as well, and we should have 10 stitches around in our loop. So for the next 2 rows, we're going to be working 10 single crochet around. So row 12 is 8 single crochet in green and then 2 single crochet in white. And then row 13 is 6 single crochet in white and 4 single crochet in green. Like so. So you'll be able to see that we've got this slightly wider part of the leg being built up now. So over the next 3 rows, we're going to be building up a knee joint. So what that's going to look like is increases at the back and decreases at the front, which is going to encourage our crochet to head off in this direction. So work the next 3 rows of stitches to build up that little knee. Just like that, so you can see what I was talking about there, how our increases have rounded this out to the side and sloped it off on top. So that should be centering roughly with the back of your foot. Don't be too worried if it's off to one side or the other. Frogs' legs aren't perfectly symmetrical things. They're just not. So what we're going to do is put a little bit of stuffing just in this little part of the leg, okay? Not a lot, just a little bit to help it hold its shape. There we go. So like this flappy bit, still empty. We've just put a little bit of stuffing in there. So now what we're going to do is the start of next row has a bit of a weird stitch to it. And that is because we're going to fold for the next stitch. And we're going to work around the post of one of our existing stitches to lock our frog leg into place like that. So the first thing you have to do is identify your magic ring and count 7 rows up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Then you're going to fold your leg down so that like we're folding down towards the middle back of the foot. Insert your hook around a post in row 7. So it should be a post that falls at the back of the leg. Hopefully you can see that there on the screen. And I'm going to work my stitch around that post and I'm going to skip the next set of loops on the leg. We're doing this stitch instead of that stitch. So that is what that looks like at this point. And then I'm going to work the rest of the row. So skipping the next stitch. So there we go. So we still have 12 stitches around. It's just one of them is going to look a little bit odd because it's through the back of the heel there. So make sure that you really pay attention as to where that little kind of hidden stitch is because you do want to work into it in row 18 as well. So row 18 is simply working 12 single crochet around all in your green. Then you're going to work row 19, which is 4 single crochet in green, then 4 in white, and then 4 in your green again. Before changing to blue for your final row, which is 6 decreases around. Like so, and then I'm going to finish that off. And we're going to finish off any other strands that are still sort of hanging on. And tuck them away inside with another little bit of stuffing, just to give him nice thick boy thighs there. There we go. So we want a fairly well stuffed thigh and a little bit of stuffing in the top of the leg, but you'll notice that this bit here sits pretty empty and there is no stuffing at all from there down. So now we have stuffed it. I'm going to take my hook and weaving through the front loops only, just weave this tail end around and pull to close. So that is what your back leg is going to look like. Now you might wonder why we've put this little splash of blue on the stump, and that'll make sense to you in a moment. Honestly, that's just to really help with assembly and lining everything up. So grab all of your pieces. It's just like, I love a project that only has like 4 pieces. And we're back looking at the pointy butt of our frog. And all we're going to do is we're going to grab one of our legs and we're going to line up those blue rows. So we line up the blue, the white, and the green. They're a little zigzaggy, but basically that's what we're doing. And I'm going to insert one pin through the middle to act as like a pivot point. And then I'm just going to pivot until I'm happy with the angle that the leg is on. Now you might want yours down a little bit. I like a nice perky sitting upright frog, so I'm going to twist mine like that. It means that I'll be adjusting my front arms as well, but for now, that's the first leg and where I think it should sit. I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. So line up those rows and then pivot it until I am happy with where it's sitting. Now with my front feet, you'll note that I've got them pointing inwards slightly. That's just a preference thing. I'm going to move mine up a little bit, not too much, because they do bend a little, to make them sitting flat with my back feet as well. So make sure that all 4 feet touch the ground. Oh, he's so cute. And there he is. So we haven't sewn him together yet. He's looking very, very cute. And I found that each of mine has been in a slightly different pose. So like my dark purple gentleman has been sort of slightly more hunched over. You'll note that he has a flatter head than the one we're doing today, and that is because I've gone through and I've put some stitches through the head to like hold it in a flatter position. But I've decided I like the pudgy head better in this particular instance. And then we have this little guy as well, who is a little bit more hunched over as well. So now all we're going to do is take a needle, and I'm going to use white to sew this guy together, and I'm going to sew on each of the legs. And there is your finished frog. So there are your finished frogs. I hope you had a lot of fun making him with me today. If you're looking for something else to watch, just as background noise while you crochet, I highly recommend the live stream that I did last week. We started designing Leafy on together, and it was a really fun, chill stream. So yeah, I recommend checking that out if you're looking for something a little bit more long form. But other than that, I will see you next week. Okay. Bye.